happy to have you in our session. We shall be starting off right away. We're waiting on one of our panelists, but I believe they're here now. So welcome to the session. The purpose of today is to have a discussion on investment opportunities in Rwanda. Our session is slated to take an hour and a half, something like that. The way the panel session will be conducted is we will have a few speakers, both from the entrepreneur side, but also investors who have experience in Kigali. Then we shall follow this with a Q&A. So if you have a few questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll try to pick them up as the session goes along. But also, towards the end of the session, we shall also have a few minutes at the end where you have the ability to ask your question. So if you have a burning question, just type it up. I'll follow up and see when we can ask. And if you have a specific question for a speaker, please let me know in the chat also. So again, welcome everybody. Before we get started, why are we having this session? So for those of you that may or may not be familiar with what's happening in Rwanda, Rwanda has been a growing economy over the last many years, and there's a lot of excitement about the opportunities. And from the investment side, a lot of investment capital continues to flow into the country. So there's always questions about, what opportunities exist, what experiences do investors that have been on the ground and actually put investment into Rwanda, what experiences have they had? And also from the entrepreneur side, the idea is to have a discussion around what their challenges have been attracting capital or what successes they have had. So we have a very diverse panel today who I'll let introduce themselves in the next short while. This session is being brought to you together with a USAID funded project called Nguriza Nshore. With us today, we have the Chief of Party of the project, Mr. Robin Padberg. I'll pass it on to him to give us a few words specific to the project and what the goals are that allows us to put something like this together. Over to you, Robin.
I hope that everyone so far is having a great start of the SANCAP Forum and that it's gotten off to a good start. On behalf of the Nguriza Nshore team and our partners, I'd really like to thank you for attending this panel discussion on investment opportunities in Rwanda. Before we begin though, just allow me just to tell you briefly about Nguriza Nshore and what we do. Nguriza Nshore is a Feed the Future project funded by the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. And it's part of the US government's program to combat global hunger and food security. The project is really seeking to promote rural and economic growth by facilitating the emergence of dynamic SMEs and particularly a strong agribusiness sector in Rwanda. Nguriza Nshore is a 5-year program. We started in April 2018 and we'll be working all the way through April 2023. And the program is seeking really to facilitate finance and investment, both debt and equity, for small and medium enterprises in agribusiness or the agricultural value chains. The project strives ultimately to contribute to Rwanda's economic growth, social development, and really job creation. We focus on 3 main components. The first component is to expand the capacity of financial institutions and non-bank financial institutions to finance small, medium enterprises and agribusinesses. The second one is to increase private and commercial investment into small, medium enterprises and agribusinesses. And the third one is to strengthen the policy environment for small, medium enterprises and agribusinesses to increase their performance and profitability. I'm particularly excited about this afternoon's panel discussion as it'll provide you with some unique insights into doing business in Rwanda. And as you attend this year's SANCAP Africa Forum and reflect about your current ventures, as well as some of the future opportunities, investment opportunities in Rwanda, I encourage you to reach out to us and to explore how Nguriza Nshore might be able to partner with you to help you with the thought process and or actually in the execution process. We have a virtual booth at the forum, so I encourage you to visit us and to drop us a note, and please let us know if there's anything we can do. I hope everyone enjoys the panel, and I wish you a very successful SANCAP Forum. Thank you very much. Mark, back over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Robin. So as Robin mentioned, we are part of this 5-year project. We're a few years in, and a lot of exciting things have been happening in the investment space. To introduce myself, my name is Mark Mutahi. I'm a managing partner with Bid Network, and we are partnered with DAI in the Nguriza Nshore project, where we serve as a transaction advisor. So our speakers today, we have 5 speakers who are from different sectors: microfinance, tech, agribusiness, and investors. I'll let them introduce themselves, after which we shall get into the actual panel, the meat of the panel. So Ignace, I'll pass it over to you. So Ignace is the managing director for Goshen Microfinance, which is a leading microfinance in Rwanda. I'll let him introduce himself and give you a brief on what their business does. Ignace.
Thank you, Mark. I'm Nyasi Musangafura. I'm the managing director of Goshen Finance, PLC. I have a master's degree in finance and with a large experience in the financial sector, 8 years in the banks and 7 years as managing director of microfinance. I am also a chairperson of the same. The same is a Rwanda Institute of Cooperative and Entrepreneurship and Microfinance. I am also a member of AMIR, where I am chairing the supervisory committee. About Goshen, Goshen is a microfinance created in 2005. We have we are a microfinance which focus on middle and low income earners. We have 9 branches with more than 4,000 clients, savers, and we have also around 4,000 borrowers. Our loan portfolio at the end of 2020 was around $6 million US, and the NPL was 3% for non performing loan. I think I can summarize my presentation there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ignace. So our next panelist is Andrew Kabucho, who works with Incofin, which is a professional investment fund. Andrew?
Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you, Mark, and good afternoon to everyone on the call. My name is Andrew Kabucho. I work as an investment manager for Incofin Investment Management. I am based in their office in Nairobi, but Incofin is a Belgian-based impact investment manager who focuses on, I would say, investment intermediation between the North and the South. Mostly our fundraising is done from European-based investors and focused on investments within emerging markets. We focus on currently it's 2 main areas, that is financial institutions and agriculture value chains. And very soon we have 2 new sectors that I would say are in the nascent stage, that is access to clean drinking water, as well as food and nutrition. So in these sectors, we have quite a number of different funds that provide either debt or equity funding to private enterprises that are focused on these sectors. And as an impact investor, over and above the commercial aspects of the investments, we have a very strong focus on the social and environmental impact that our investees generate in their day-to-day activities. And we are very keen on measuring this before the investment and also during our relationship with these investees. I would say total assets under management globally is about, say, $1.2 billion. And in Africa, we are slightly, I would say, below 80, or I would say $80 to $90 million exposure. We are present in quite a number of countries in West, East, and South Africa. In French-speaking West Africa, we are active in Senegal, Burkina, Togo, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, and Ghana. And in East Africa, we are active in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and in the south, we are also having exposure in Botswana and South Africa. I would stop there as a brief summary of Incofin.
Thank you, Andrew, and welcome to the panel. Our next panelist is Tobias Reiter. Tobias runs a tech company, DBEG Tech. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tobias, and I'm originally from Vienna, Austria. And I've been living here in Rwanda for 3 years now. I'm the co-founder and CEO of DBEG Medical. And basically what we're doing is we're using AI and a data-driven approach to make sure that hospitals always have the right quantities of each medical product available in stock to treat their patients. So we see in general in Africa, we'll talk about it later, there's a huge gap in the medical supply chain. And actually every minute, 5 people are dying in the developing world, most of them in Africa, because of diseases that could be treated if the right medical products were available. So that's what we're trying to solve, and I'm happy to tell you more about it later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Tobias. Welcome to panel 2. So our next panelist, back to the investor side, is John Nicholas, who is with East African Investments. Joanna?
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Joanna Nicholas. I'm British and Rwandan. I've been a management consultant for the last 25 years, the last 10 years of which I've been in Rwanda. My background is in a mixture of commercial due diligence, working for private equity funds in London. And then here in Rwanda, I've been doing operational performance improvement consulting. And I also put myself to the test by running my own business here in tourism for 5 years. So I experienced all the highs and lows of running a business. Representing East Africa Investments, we've been active in Rwanda for the last 4 years. We have made 8 investments in that time. Our focus is on impact, and we like to keep quite a broad definition of impact. We're interested in any sector at all. What we are interested in is businesses that have the potential to scale, so that they can expand, for example, either beyond Rwanda into East Africa or globally. And I'm really looking forward to the panel today. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Last but not least, we have another entrepreneur, Temba Elias, who runs a agribusiness venture in the poultry sector. Tobias, sorry, Temba, I'll let you introduce yourself, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me. Sorry, I had to switch off my video just to conserve on the bandwidth. My name is Temba, as Mark has mentioned. I'm originally from South Africa. I came here in Rwanda to start a company named EasyHatch. EasyHatch is a hatchery, poultry producing company. We started in 2016. And we focus mainly on working with smallholder farmers, where we provide them with the necessary inputs that they need in order to become successful. And our main focus is currently for providing them with day-old chicks, other extension services such as vaccines and veterinary services, feeds, and hands-on training. We currently work throughout Rwanda, farmers in all the districts, and we also have farmers we work with in the DRC, particularly in Goma and Bukavu. So our main focus is basically, our mission is to help the smallholder farmers transition from just subsistence farming to actually become more commercially viable and profitable. And so far, we've succeeded in working together with almost over 400 smallholder farmers. And we're seeing a growing demand of many more farmers coming on board, even despite the COVID situations going on at the moment. We're still seeing a big increase in the demand from various poultry farmers and new farmers wanting to come into the poultry sector. So I'll stop there for now. I'll be able to answer any questions later on.
Thank you, Temba. Welcome to the panel. So I'd like to start with Nas. Nas, you know, in most countries, and I'm assuming it's the same thing in Rwanda, the financial industry is probably the most heavily regulated and has the most oversight. So just to set the stage, I'm curious what your view is. If you can give us a brief description of the MFI landscape in Rwanda from regulatory and size standpoint, but also Temba made reference to COVID-19. So mine is sort of a two-part question, which is one, how does the landscape look from the MFI side, but also what have been the impacts of COVID to your industry?
Thank you, Mark. As you said, the National Bank of Rwanda is mandated to regulate and supervise the microfinance and the banks in Rwanda and insurance as well. The microfinance institution in Rwanda include saving and credit cooperatives, which are called SACCO, limited companies like Goshen, and the microfinance banks, which are classified in other level between the bank and the microfinance. And if I try to describe the landscape as mentioned, Rwanda has 459 microfinances. Most of them are the SACCOs, Murenge SACCO. They are the cooperatives which are located in each sector in Rwanda. They are 416. We have 19 PLC microfinance, like Goshen, which are the classic microfinance, and the 24 non-Murenge SACCO. Non-Murenge SACCO is like Mwarimu SACCO for the teachers. There are some SACCOs for farmers, whatever. There are 44. So the MFI, the total asset of all MFI in Rwanda are 330 million US dollar, which represent around 6% of the total asset of financial sector. The return on equity are before COVID was between 14 and 12, but now at the end of 2020 it was 1.9 average. While when return on asset was 4.3, now it is 0.7. NPL was average of 6.6%, 6.7. Today it is 12.8. So coming back to the effect of COVID, you can the figure talk themselves. Is when the return on equity was between 12 and 14. Today it is between 4 and 0.7. The challenge due to COVID was caused by the lockdown and the social distancing, because during the lockdown, the business was were disrupted. Social distancing has caused a big crisis to the transport and the client who are working in the market, because the instruction was that even in the bus must not exceed 50% of its capacity. Even the market, the 50%, the market cannot exceed 50% of its capacity. So this was has caused a big loss to the client, to the business, and to the financial institution in general. The restructured loans at the end of the year was around 30% of the portfolio. And now we are still experiencing the same challenge because we had even the second lockdown, a part of the one of last year. In general, the whole ecosystem was paralyzed and it touched our service in general. And we have, I can mention also the challenge we have faced during this COVID pandemic has given a lesson of the importance of digitalization of our services. Today, before lockdown, the most of microfinance were not using Momo or other tools of transaction, digital transaction. But today, more than 80% of microfinance, a part of SACCO, are using at least Momo Cash. But we are still struggling to reach other level of using or operation like loan requests, loan disbursement, payment, using digital services, digital solution. I think that is about the situation, the landscape of microfinance in Rwanda, and also the challenge of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Inyas. I have a few follow-up questions, but I'll ask them later. Andrew, so Inyas mentioned there's 459 MFIs in Rwanda. I'm curious how many you've invested in. Not specific to Rwanda only, but just within the region, what your experience has been investing in the MFI space.
Yes, so as I mentioned, we have exposure in the MFI sector in Rwanda, but I would say one of the challenge that we face in Rwanda is this high level of fragmentation in the MFI space. Frankly speaking, we only have one equity investment, and it is within the microfinance bank space. As Ines has mentioned, the microfinance banks, I think there's only 3 of them, and around probably maybe 10 to 12 commercial banks. So a bulk of the entities that are purely focused on microfinance are within the private companies that are doing microfinance and these Umurenje SACCOs. But then if you look at the asset distribution in the banking sector, I think a bulk of it is within the commercial banks and the microfinance bank space. So one challenge we face is that, you know, whenever we set like target or minimum ticket sizes, we find like the small, especially the SACCOs, based on the legal framework under which they operate, it's very difficult to invest in such. And also when you look at the microfinance institutions, we rarely get, for instance, I would say our average ticket sizes is about maybe $2 million. And, you know, this would require, I would say, MFIs to have asset sizes of, or balance sheet sizes of about $10 million. So immediately we struggle to find, you know, potential investable opportunities in this segment. Also, in terms of the potential to grow, you find these Umurenje SACCOs are very, very popular amongst the people that are using financial services, and a big part of this population, I would say, are net savers and not necessarily borrowers. So you find, yes, these SACCOs accumulate a lot of deposit. They place them with commercial banks, But then, there's very little or very limited borrowing actually going on in this category. So it also limits the level of growth that some of these SACCOs can achieve. So that has been, I would say, one of our major hurdles in terms of placing investments in Rwanda. Looking at the broader East Africa region, I mean, we see a lot of strong economic growth, say pre-COVID, with most countries registering between 5 and 8% GDP growth. But when you look at like the contributing factors to this growth is mostly state controlled or state investments, in infrastructure, in healthcare, in education, with very, very slow or minimum contribution from the private sector, and more so even from the MSME segment. And in certain markets, we see this MSME segment, micro and small and medium enterprises, sort of struggling, as indicated by growing levels of non-performing loans within banking, mostly within banking, the banking segment. Levels of financial inclusions, I would say, is really growing across these different markets, mainly aided by adoption of digital technology, as well as mobile phone and internet adoption across these regions, which I would say was very instrumental, especially during COVID, in ensuring continuity of the sector. Of course, also in these markets, same as Rwanda, we see a lot of saturation in terms of the number of actors compared to the adult population or number of MSMEs in this economy. So I mean, there's a lot of competition amongst the different players, which in a way increases some risks of over-indebtedness of the customers, but also has led to improvement of services through innovation. Regulation, I would say, has also been a major challenge. In certain markets within East Africa, we find this to be very, very uncertain and unstable. In Tanzania, for example, we have faced a lot of regulatory hurdles that has made the market very unpopular for our investments. In Rwanda, for example, I know they're working on some new regulations, which I think are for the microfinance sector, that are in draft form. The microfinance bank are actively lobbying against these regulations because, to some extent, they are considered to be a bit punitive to the sector. So regulation has also been quite a difficult hurdle in some of these markets. I mean, in Kenya, for example, you have the interest rate caps that were imposed on the banking sector, that also affected the level of investment we could do within the microfinance space, mainly because microfinance could now access cheaper credit from banks. The other, I would say, challenge we've faced also in Rwanda is the cost of funds. So the effective cost of funds for the players within the financial sector is quite low. And for international investment, especially on the debt side, we usually have to hedge our investments, and you find the cost of hedging for local currency, Rwandese franc included, sometimes can be quite prohibitive, to be able to lend to MFIs within the sector. And so this, I would say, has also actually been a very important barrier for us to be able to access even the scalable MFIs, because we are really not able to meet their expectations. And the Central Bank of Rwanda has also been quite keen on reducing or lowering the cost of borrowing for customers and the SME sector. So that further narrows the spread that these MFIs can be able to get when they borrow internationally. So I would say, in a nutshell, these have been some of our experiences, within East Africa and also specifically for Rwanda.
Thank you, Andrew. There's a few questions on the chat, I think specifically targeted towards you. I will come back to those if you have a second to read them. But if anybody has questions, feel free to put them up in the chat. We'll answer them as we go, but some we shall address at the end. So Andrew, I'll let you take a read of those, and we shall come back to them. As we do that, Tobias, over to you. So I think there's no denying that in the region, our healthcare is probably not as advanced as the population would demand. And you're doing a lot of stuff in tech, in the health space. I'm curious to know what your view is in the role of tech in good healthcare delivery, but also faced with potentially not inadequate infrastructure to support that tech development.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good point already. The way I see it here in the region is there's a huge need for quality healthcare, for reliable healthcare. So the problem is when you go out there that products are often not available. Doctors, they have a good level of education, they want to treat patients, but they don't get the products that they actually need in order to treat their patients. So the insufficiencies in terms of supply chain are a huge issue. What I want to say is that the supply chain is very insufficient, and at the same time, you're having these issues with remote areas, right? A doctor in a remote area can't really get the products that they need from a reliable supplier. So this insufficiency and also the risk attached to medical supplies, if you don't get the products that you need in order to treat your patients, right, then your hospital will lose its reputation, and you might have to refer patients to other hospitals, and they will not come back to you. So we thought, okay, using technology to solve this problem, that's what we want to do. How do we want to do that? Well, with the power of data. The data is the new oil, and unfortunately, there's not much data available on the market right now, so there's not much open source data. We have to collect the data ourselves. That's what we're doing. And with all the data points, with all the sales that we're generating through our procurement platform, we can make sure that we tell the hospital, you don't need to stock 10,000 surgery gloves. You don't need 5,000 face masks. You probably need only 500 per week, So you don't need to allocate all your funds on specific products. We enable you to have a wider product range, and then being able to treat more patients. If you treat more patients, you will get more funding, from more money from the patients, obviously, and also from RSSP, from the social security organizations and insurances, and then you can improve your infrastructure. So that's basically what we want to do, but to give you a wider overview of the challenges in healthcare and also the opportunities, because I think there are a lot of people here that are listening to it and that might be interested in investing in Rwanda, in healthcare specifically, is that the demand is huge, but both the supply chain is not sufficient. So technology plays a huge role there, and remote diagnostics, right? AI, data-driven applications, they don't yet really exist here on the market yet. And I think there's a huge potential for collaboration, for companies coming into the market, offering advanced solutions, and obviously for investments. And this is also what we see right now with COVID-19. Hospitals see that they need an advanced solution. They need to be able to do inventory management and procurement in a more sufficient way. They can't rely on notebooks or spreadsheets anymore. They have to use technology also to order things online, right? We had a lockdown here, so people were not able to travel to the capital of the city to procure. So there's a lot of there are a lot of things happening in terms of technology adoption, and we're right in the middle of it. So we're happy that we can really create an impact right now. And yeah, right now we're working with 350 healthcare providers, hospitals, clinics, and also local organizations like USAID in the region, in Rwanda, Burundi, and DRC. And we're doing a fundraise now. We're also constantly looking for new partners. I will talk about that later. I think the fundraising is also an interesting topic in Rwanda in general. But this is the overview that I would like to give about the healthcare situation in Rwanda, and obviously the very important role of technology in terms of providing affordable and high quality.
Thank you. Thanks for that overview, Tobias. So then, yeah, moving on, I'd like to pass it on to Joanna. You know, a lot of people have the belief that Rwanda is a small market, the population is small, the geographical size is small, and there's really a question about the potential for scale for investments. And now I know East African Investments has chosen Rwanda as a principal country of focus. So curious as to the thinking behind that and how you view the opportunities in Rwanda.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, so as our name suggests, we are interested in making investments in all East African countries, but we began operations in Rwanda. And to be honest, in the first 3 years of our existence, we generated enough of a pipeline here in Rwanda to not need to go looking in Uganda and Tanzania, Kenya, etc. I think the second thing is we don't just make investments, but we also try to provide support. And that support comes either from me or it comes from third-party companies with whom we make partnerships. So for example, at the moment, we have a partnership with a Swedish management consulting company. They're helping one of our portfolio businesses, which is Winners Crisps, to anyone in Rwanda who enjoys a snack. And the third level of support that we provide is through our investors, those who've invested into our fund. If they have a particular interest in one of the portfolio businesses we have, then they will try to, only if wanted, they will try to provide strategic support to the founder. So all of that sort of support does require a certain knowledge of how markets in Rwanda work, and it requires us to be here to a certain extent. So because I'm here, so far, we've only just gone beyond Rwanda. We made one investment in a Kenyan business just before Christmas, but the other 7 investments have all been in Rwanda so far. I think to address your point, absolutely, Rwanda is a small market and it is a real challenge, to be honest. It's a challenge. It's starting to be a challenge to generate enough interesting businesses for our pipeline. It's also a challenge for those businesses to then expand sufficiently to demonstrate an interesting level of growth for our fund. That said, I think the government has a really interesting strategy of making Rwanda effectively a giant incubator for people to start their businesses. And I think we can all be proud of the level of control that exists in Rwanda. So there are downsides. When you run a business, it means you really, really have to pay your taxes, and you pay horrible fines if you pay your taxes late. That's the downside to the level of control. The upside is that it means that businesses really can move forward. They can be registered. They can use land in order to sorry, I've forgotten the word now. They can use land in order to, raise capital or to provide, I've forgotten, there's a missing word there, I've forgotten, to give to banks so that they can borrow money. Collateral, thank you. Yes. I think the other thing is, one of the other panelists mentioned there's a number of really interesting laws that are coming in. So even in January, there were 3 pieces of legislation, including an investment code, that will really make Rwanda an interesting place for investors to come, but also for foreign entrepreneurs like Tobias. Why has Tobias chosen Rwanda instead of choosing Nairobi or Kampala? I just think it's a really exciting environment for people to be working in. And, in terms of the type of businesses we look for, we're quite happy if a business chooses first to use Rwanda to explore, to learn how to run a business, to prove that they have customers who will pay for their product or service. and then expand to another country. So Kasha is a really good example. We were an early investor in Kasha. I hope everybody on the call is familiar with that company. It's an e-commerce company selling pharmaceutical and personal hygiene goods. They started in Rwanda, they learned how to run the business, and now they're active in Kenya. And we're quite happy if Kenya proves to be a better revenue stream in the future. But I think Rwanda as an incubator is a model that is really starting to work for everybody. It's also a lovely place to live. So if you are going to be an entrepreneur living here, you know, why not come and live here instead of living in one of the other East African capitals?
Thank you. Thanks, Joanna. Over to you, Temba, last but not least again here. So Joanna just mentioned taxes and fines, which are two things all entrepreneurs hate. Curious how you've been able to grow and develop your business in such an environment, and you know, what your journey has been to date with EasyHatch. Temba?
Yes, thank you, Mark. I think it's other speakers have mentioned quite rightly that raising capital in Rwanda is quite a big challenge. One of the big factors that we've just actually realized is the issue of land. You know, we've only managed to, for example, acquire our own land over the past year. And we've noticed that has actually opened a lot of opportunities in terms of raising capital within the domestic financial sector. Because one of the challenges that I've noticed in most of the banks in Rwanda is they only consider land or fixed property for collateral. Any movable property, they don't take it as collateral. So despite all us as a company having had almost $500,000 worth of equipment over the past 5 years, we've not been able to actually use that as collateral. So that's been a big of a serious challenge. And so something that probably would advise any new entrepreneur coming into Rwanda is get yourself access to land as quickly as possible, because that will open a lot of doors in terms of accessing further financing within the domestic market. It's also the other challenge that maybe I can mention in terms of raising capital from foreign investors. It comes back to the issue of Rwanda being a small country. Quite a lot of time we find that some of the investors that I've spoken to, they do mention the size of Rwanda, you know, particularly in terms of scaling. You know, the first question they ask is, how big can you scale your operation? And Rwanda is only about 12 million people, so you can only scale it up to so far. And but what I think one big advantage that we sort of use as our advantage as EasyHatch is to use Rwanda as a launching pad into the region. Over the past year, for example, we've seen ourselves growing quite in big numbers into the DRC market. We are based in the northern province of Rwanda, which is about an hour into Congo, which has been a very much a big benefit for us in terms of moving our product into Congo. So that's one of the things that I've always sort of like mentioned to potential investors that look, Rwanda itself might be small, but it's a good launching pad into the region. And the fact that Rwanda has got a stable economy, good political system where everything is almost guaranteed, you know exactly what's happening. There are laws and there are rules that are pretty much being followed by all government institutions. So as an investor, you pretty much are assured that your investment is secured. Yeah, I think I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Temba. If I can just follow up with that first, to the last comment you made there. So you know, there's good governance, which we'll agree, and there's also a stable economy. So then, how does that match up against the fact that most other regions don't have those things? So if your launch pad is in a region that is not, I guess, homogeneous to the neighbors, what has been your experience in trying to get into the other markets that are faced with completely different set of challenges?
Database with what? Did catch the last part?
Different challenges, right? So Rwanda is different for many of the markets surrounding it.
Yes.
And I think yourself and Joanna just mentioned how it can serve as a good launch pad. I'm thinking from the other side, thinking, okay, if you go from Rwanda and move into Congo, which is a completely different economy, different type of governance, different business environment, how challenging would that be then, seeing how the launch pad was bathed out of something?
Yeah, you are right. It is a big challenge, especially Congo, where the rule of law, in inverted commas, is not so much well enforced. We found that we've experienced quite a lot of challenges, especially when we have to move some of our goods across the border. We find some of the rules and procedures are constantly changing, and it's pretty much on the whim of whoever is manning the border post at the end of the day. So those are some of the challenges that we battle with on a day-to-day basis. And unfortunately, some of these challenges, you can't escalate them through the various government departments. For example, I've been in touch with the Ministry of Trade here in Rwanda in the past when we've faced challenges in moving our goods across the border. And the response pretty much is like, look, in terms of the government to government, everything is okay. You can move your goods across the border. There's no restrictions, But the person actually manning the border posts is the ones who are causing the problems, particularly about demanding for bribes and things like that, So those are some of the challenges we're facing. Unfortunately, it's something that's outside of our control as a business in Rwanda. And it's something that possibly we can lobby relevant organizations to work more closely with the neighboring countries in terms of more enforcement of rules and regulations and abidance to law and order, which will then help to actually make trading across the borders more smoother. There's the new free trade area that's just come in force this year. So I'm hoping that will actually probably hopefully play a role in terms of making things a lot smoother in trading across the borders. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'll go back to Andrew. So Andrew, from your experience as an institutional fund, what would you say would be maybe your 2-3 top lessons learned that you'd want to share with investors that are curious, are interested, prospective investors looking to get into the Rwanda market?
Yeah, so as mentioned, based on the structural challenges that are present in the market, I believe it's better to approach Rwanda with a bit more patient type of capital, mainly because it's a young nation. Most sectors, I would say, are in their nascent development or early growth phases. So patient capital becomes very important. Another consideration is to have some blended finance type of structures where you can also provide some form of technical assistance to some of these businesses that are growing and are in need of international exposure, international or technical expertise. So this is very, very important, I would say, for a market like Rwanda. The other thing, as an economy that is really planned by centrally by the state, I would say it's very important to partner, or at least as an entry route, get to know the different development agencies that are government backed, because they have been for us a very important source of information, an important source of understanding the landscape. Example, it's the Rwanda Development Board. It really helped us as we were navigating Rwanda, just to try and understand where are some of the interesting opportunities specifically for agriculture, and also for the microfinance, I mean, for the financial services sector, and also in terms of building your network. It really helps to engage with some of these local government bodies that are able to, I would say, link you up with the different players and make your learning curve less steeper as a new investor in this new market. Yeah, I would say that maybe these are the top 3 tips that I would share from our experience with Rwanda.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Sticking with the investor side, Joanna, you shared some of your experience with Kasha and some of the other entrepreneurs. What would you then, if you had to give us a few tips, especially in the tech space for entrepreneurs that are in the region, not only Rwanda, looking to fundraise, what would sort of be your view on things to think about, things to pay attention to be able to get that investment to close?
Thank you, Mark. I think, firstly, we had a really interesting chat this week on we have an ecosystem WhatsApp group going in Rwanda, and we were having a laugh, to be honest, about the fact that there seems to now be 41 hubs for tech entrepreneurs operating in Rwanda. That's with a population of 13 million, bearing in mind a significant percentage of the population are still people just growing food in order to eat. They're not likely to be tech entrepreneurs. So we're pretty well served with tech hubs here. And I think really my advice would be, please pay attention to what those how those hubs are helping you, because they are typically providing decent help. They're well funded by people like USAID, MasterCard Foundation, etc. And they're providing good advice. And what I see increasingly, which is quite frustrating, is the same 10, 15 entrepreneurs actually just hopping from hub to hub. They sign up to every single program, and they don't necessarily, they do the bare minimum, let's say, to tick the box so that the person operating the hub can say, yes, that business was one of my customers, but they don't actually attend, the lessons, the courses, take full benefit of the coaching. And I think that's a real shame, because many of those hubs that I've worked with, they are providing decent advice on how to prepare both your business, but also how to prepare your pitch. So it's quite frustrating on my side. I think, therefore, from the other point of view, a lot of my conversations with potential businesses can be quite frustrating. We do have a bit of a problem in Rwanda that the majority of people under the age of 25 have grown up in an environment here which has been entirely funded by development partners. And therefore there's quite a strong grant mentality. And it can be quite difficult talking to potential entrepreneurs or people who have started their business, for them to understand what it means to have an investor. It means that we expect to get our money back, not just get our money back, but get our money back with a little bit extra as well at some point. And we expect you to communicate with us, and we expect you to consider us in a gentle way as a sort of active partner in your business. And some of the businesses that we've invested in, some of the entrepreneurs that we've spoken to, they find this a little bit difficult. They think that they should just be given a check for some money, then they disappear off, do their thing, never be in touch with us again. And when we ask for our money back, they're a little bit surprised or shocked that that was how it was set up to work. So I think my advice to entrepreneurs is, please take the advice seriously. Bringing on board investors is a different thing to accepting grants. And then I think the final thing, I have a colleague in Sweden who is a professional investor in Northern Europe. And he often says to me, Joanna, please find businesses that are copying with pride. And what he means by this is, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you don't have to come up with a completely different solution to something. Look around you in the world. There are tons of really, really good businesses. There are tons of solutions to problems that human beings have. Tobias is a good example. I think Tobias's business is extremely innovative, but, and he'll forgive me for saying this, he is improving a supply chain. There are tons of supply chains in Rwanda that need to be improved and could use technology to do that. So I'm rather than waiting for entrepreneurs to come to me, I'm actually looking at things the other way around. I'm trying to find supply chains in which there might be an entrepreneur who is coming up with an innovative solution to improve that supply chain. So I hope that makes sense. My message is copy something from somewhere else, do it in a way that is suitable for the Rwandan market or the East African market you're in, but don't think you've got to start from scratch. Copy and build on it and make it better. Hope that makes sense, Mark. I think you're on mute, Mark.
Thank you, Joanna. So Tobias, I was saying, as you can hear, Joanna thinks your business is great. She's an investor. I hope you have her number. If you don't, I do. But to bring it back to you then, based on the things she's been saying, what has been your experience fundraising within the region for VBED? So, some of the challenges you've had, and if you had a wish list of solutions, what would you think people like Joanna should know, actually?
Right. Yeah, Joanna and I are in touch. So
okay, perfect.
Actually, Rwanda is a very small country, so it's like everyone knows each other, and we have this kind of network, a very supportive network, I would say, that really connects people with potential investors, with other entrepreneurs. Yeah, in general, Rwanda, I think, is a very good place to start your business in. As we've already heard today, you can test your solution, right? And then you can easily take it to other countries. If it works here, you have a proof of concept, you can expand to Burundi, you can expand to Kenya, to maybe DRC. That's also what we're doing. And in terms of fundraising, when you're here in Rwanda, you can access all these international aid agencies, right? Because Rwanda is a very safe place, so that's why it's kind of like a hub for international aid agencies, USAID, GIZ, and so on. There's a lot of support, also a lot of support from the government, RDB, there's plus 250 startups. So there's a good ecosystem, I would say, but unfortunately, the challenge is there are not many early stage investors that have a real presence here. So talking to investors, meeting them, one-on-one meetings is a challenge. What you can do is you can, be part of all those events and training sessions, and then you connect with the right people, and they would link you normally to bigger VCs in maybe Kenya or in Europe, or international ones that are working out of the US. But the challenge that we had is there were not a lot of pitch meetings, pitch events, right, with investors on the ground, especially now during COVID. That is not happening anymore anyway, anywhere in the world. So events like this are great because they give us the opportunity to really talk to other investors, engage with investors. Rwanda is a small country. It's not as easy to find investors as it is, probably in London or in the Silicon Valley. And this has been our biggest challenge. So meeting the right investors, at the same time, working capital. We also heard it today. Getting working capital from the banks is almost impossible, right? Trade financing. So raising debt is very difficult, and also raising equity is not as easy as probably in other countries. But then you have this huge support from all these agencies and the network. If I'm talking now, Joanna knows me, so she would maybe refer me to another investor. It's a very personal thing, more personal than it would be probably in London, where you have to compete with thousands of other entrepreneurs. And in terms of wish list, I wish we would have more personal pitch events, especially after COVID. We would have more investors that would visit Rwanda regularly, that we could, with these organizations that we have, the tech hubs, really create events where local entrepreneurs can meet other investors. Because right now, reaching out to investors, sending a cold email, normally, doesn't really lead to a lot of success. But in general, we're happy that we're now, once you have that platform, the platform that you're enabling, then you can really reach out to people and you can tell about your solution. But getting this first step done, getting people to know you, being part of this kind of community, we are know about these opportunities, and they struggle with the limited capital for years until they reach that kind of stage. So that's, I think, something we can all work on. We have a huge community here now in the group, and I hope together we can improve the funding availability in Rwanda.
Thank you, Tobias. Inyas, so Tobias says, he hopes we can improve the funding opportunities. You guys have money at Goshen. I don't know how aligned you are in terms of growth opportunities with businesses like his, or smaller size businesses that are looking for funding. From your perspective in the MFI space, where do you see growth opportunities?
Yeah, thank you. I am happy to hear from my colleagues here, and I want to mention that Goshen is also there for looking for investment, for growing its activities and services. In fact, Goshen opportunities and the perspective in the future. Today, we are looking for becoming a digital microfinance, where almost all our service could be accessed easily by the customers. So this is this need an investment. Secondly, we need to expand our services, especially in agribusiness, because during this period you have seen that farmers were always needed. Even during lockdown, we needed food, and the farmers have continued to work, and they needed the support. As Rwanda has more than 80% of Rwandans are farmers, but we need to see how they are farmers. We need to professionalize what they do. They need to invest in cash crops, they need to be able to generate income from the agribusiness. So as a financial institution, we need to invest more in that service. At the same time, the digitalization of our services, the expansion of our product in the agribusiness, and we need also to focus in the youth, because Rwanda and the ESC in general are dominated by young generation. You can't grow without thinking about the young people. Young people need some innovative product which are meeting their needs. So as Goshen, we also need to make more effort there, and we need also to expand our network through agents and digital services. As I mentioned before, we need to digitalize our loan processes, services, and we can't achieve this with a limited investment. Goshen today is looking for additional investment, investors, strategic investors. So I can invite you, all of you, to come to Goshen, because Goshen has already a name, a reputation, but we are limited for that issue of capital. And the other thing about our our perspective versus digitalization. We have seen that microfinance sector, in terms of number, has a big number of clients. You see, I have seen, as mentioned earlier, we have the 400 above and above microfinance, which are dominated by SACCOs. And the SACCO is looking to become a cooperative bank. The government is supporting it to digitalize it, to make a big entity. And when you take the number of clients in the SACCO and the microfinance, they can take 80% of the clients. But when you compare the asset of the microfinance and the asset of the bank, it's different. 80% of the asset and 90% of the asset is in the bank, while 80% of the clients are in microfinance. So microfinance sector needs support to be able to satisfy the client, because even the government of Rwanda has invested in that area, where now the public services, all public services are required via Irembo. We have Irembo, you can pay with mobile banking. In the government services or public services, or service are advanced in digital. But when you go to the finance sector, we are a bit behind. So this is a barrier in microfinance. So as Goshen, we need to take advantage and be able to position ourselves and to grow our outreach by starting in digital, to familiarize ourselves as leaders in that new strategy to digitalize our services. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Inyas. So I think in the interest of time, we'll get to the Q&A. There's been some activity in the chat, but I'll go through that. But while I do that, there was a message on the chat from Monique Curry with Kenya. I'll invite them to speak a bit to fund. They do provide working capital and concessionary money. So Dominique, I'm not sure if you can unmute yourself.
Hi.
Maybe give a small brief on what you guys are doing.
Sure. Thanks for this opportunity. So Kenyath is a family office that was set up by a lady called Diane Eisenberg. We manage about $400 million, which we invest both through direct investment and through fund investments. And we have made some investment in Rwanda. Most of our investments are debt investment, working capital, very typically. We have quite a few in Sub-Saharan Africa in general. We have a bias, unfortunately, towards English-speaking countries, even though I'm French, but my boss is not. So yeah, if anyone is interested to discuss further, we're always happy to hear about opportunities. And in Rwanda specifically, a couple of organizations that we've invested in, for example, Get It Rwanda in the agriculture space is one of our investee. Bridges to Prosperity, which set up Trail Bridges, is one of our investee. We have a few other all across Africa, I believe, is also in Rwanda. So we have an impact first strategy. And we're able to offer concessionary terms because we're trying just to preserve capital and not necessarily, make significant returns. And the impact strategy generally is focused on supporting livelihoods for underserved communities, but that can mean quite a lot of things. So we've done a lot in agriculture, but infrastructure, financial inclusion, energy, or other sectors also considered.
Thank you so much. So yeah, for the entrepreneurs in the room, those of you that are seeking funding, there's an opportunity there. You can reach out and we can make that connection. Getting to the questions, some of which have been answered on the chat, but we'll speak to those also. One of them is targeted towards Andrew, Joanna, I think from the investor side, which is many of the businesses typically start out as family-owned businesses, and then later on they transition, they start to seek capital beyond commercial funding. So now they want to talk to private investors, either on the debt or the equity side. And the question is really around what lessons can you share on how these businesses can best do that? The transition from a family business to a well-governed corporate entity that's able to be attractive to investors of your size. So Andrew, Joanna, any one of you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I answered in the chat already. I think this is a really great question because it's surprising, although our focus is on impact, we still take the investment seriously. Ultimately, my colleagues and I are just individuals investing people's money. It's their life savings that they could have done something else with. So we try to take it quite seriously. And therefore, it can be quite frustrating for the businesses in which we make investments that we start talking, we might agree in principle that we want to make an investment, and then it could be several months before we actually sign on the dotted line and send the money over to their account. And there have been 2 or 3 occasions where it has been specifically because of this kind of challenge. I mentioned in the chat that as a really, really specific example, everybody loves to put down share capital when they go to RDB to register their business. They say, yeah, share capital, 50 million francs, or, some huge number, thinking, we're all naive. I've done exactly the same thing. We think, yeah, I've put in so much to this business, I'm just going to put down that number. But actually, according to Rwandan law, I believe you have to show that you've put that cash into the business. You can't claim that it's sweat equity or anything like that. So that's an example of the kind of mistakes that people make early on that we find ourselves trying to correct before we make an investment. I think other things can be, of course, particularly for a family-run business or where it's been an owner-operated business, making the change to a business where you may have to, for example, just have some kind of structure where you're having quarterly financial reports or quarterly performance reports. It doesn't have to be something long and sophisticated from our point of view, but we just want to hear what's going on. We want to see how you're doing, how you're progressing, and even if we're just using that to see if there might be any flags, either where we could help you, or where we might be concerned about a decision that the founder is making, and we just want to have a very relaxed chat. So I think moving to that sort of structure when you've been used to doing everything by yourself can feel difficult for some founders. Yeah, I don't know, Anthony, if you have something to add.
Yeah, so I mean, it's sometimes, yeah, it becomes a very difficult decision, but I believe that transition of putting in place proper corporate governance and as well as internal controls also serves to sort of mitigate some of the risks that the business faces. And I guess this also, works towards your or the business's advantage in terms of being able to attract investors, being able to boost their confidence that management and the owners are taking the right decisions, and that once these investors put in their money, it will be put to the it will be put to good use. So I mean, these structures and systems, I think, create some level of transparency that is actually needed for outside investors to be able to gain confidence in the entrepreneur, in the business, and also from an impact perspective, it's also very good to when you're onboarding new investors to try and make sure that they are aligned in some way to, the goals of the founder, the goals that of the family, because different investors have different approaches and different targets and different goals. So it's very important to make sure that as an entrepreneur, as a family-owned business, that you are bringing on board people who are aligned with the vision, people who will ensure that the sustainability of the business is not in question. Also, the impact that the business generates is not diluted in the pursuit of accelerated growth and IRR targets.
Thank you so much, Andrew. There's another question that I'll pass on to anybody that's happy to take it. It's really around lessons learned. So for those that have experience in different countries, there's a question around, what lessons can Rwanda learn from other economies that have been able to attract foreign investment without handing over their most productive assets. So the fear here is that the more foreign investment you bring in, there's a risk that eventually that ownership doesn't sit with the locals and sit with the nationals. So again, I'll pass it on to anybody that would want to speak to that.
But perhaps I sound defensive, and I really hope I'm not. But actually, I think my perception is that Rwanda is in quite a lucky position. I complained earlier that there can be a little bit of a grant mentality. But in fact, if you look at what I think Dominique just said, if I heard correctly, she specifically said that they're an investor not hugely focused on making a big return. That's a really good thing for an entrepreneur to hear. To be honest, it's similar with East Africa investments as well. We're more interested in knowing that we've made an impact than in thinking that we're going to earn 10 times our money back. So actually, I think entrepreneurs in Rwanda can potentially be in a really good situation where they get the chance to have investors who are more interested in making sure that they have a positive impact on the economy, a positive impact in terms of job creation, on the environment, rather than making some evil venture capitalist huge dollar return. But I might be biased. Happy to hear the opposite.
Thank you. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that. So some of the other questions have been answered, but I just want to put them real quickly in case anybody didn't have the chance to read the chat. There's a question around, and this was really directed to Andrew, based on your description of Incofin and the $2 million ticket size for MFIs. Do you have the ability to customize your strategy based on countries? Because different countries have different economies, hence different scale of opportunity. And I can let you address that real quickly as we address the final questions.
Okay, yeah. I mean, sometimes it's a bit difficult to customize investment strategy per country, mainly because most of the funds that we manage are global funds, so they are not there's no special allocation to any specific geographies, and so basically you find that when the funds are launched, they are quite small, so they're able to do smaller ticket sizes. But then as they grow in size, the deal economics just dictate that you have to do larger ticket sizes. However, we try and match the investment needs of our investors. So in certain cases, we find investors who have, say, Africa-focused mandates. So we try and structure funds and investment strategies that target this region. And in certain markets, we've found that investors also want country-focused impact targets. So we also try to structure this. So, I mean, we have, for instance, currently an India-focused fund. So this investment strategy in terms of ticket sizes, risk, return, appetite will be customized according to this country. The new funds that we are working on for access to water and food and nutrition, have a bias towards Africa, are actually Africa focused. So in this instance, we will structure and tailor the investment strategies based on the different specificities of the region. So it largely depends on you know, what our investors are demanding at the time.
Thank you, Andrew. Joanna, again, I know you addressed this question. There was a question around the currency growth gap. How do you address the issue that you're investing in hard currency in a market that is non-USD, maybe euro denominated, and the pressure being put on entrepreneurs to produce returns that are above and beyond the exchange rate risk?
Yeah, as I wrote in the chat, we don't have a good solution for this, I'm afraid. I see that Derek from Bid Network has talked about, or someone has mentioned the fact that you can use a third party to help with Forex problems. We haven't addressed that problem properly yet. So our fund is actually in pounds, British pounds. Then we agree a valuation with the founder in dollars, and we agree an investment size in dollars, and then we typically pay them in francs. So we're doing 2 conversions along there, and we have had a very specific problem with an exit that has been completed over the last year, where the business only generates money in francs. So unfortunately, the founders who've been buying back the shares from us have had to buy dollars on the open market in order to repay us, which is really not an ideal situation. However, with, I think it's an average of 5% loss per year in the Rwandan franc, we realized that if we didn't price everything in dollars, then we would really end up making a loss unless the business does exceptionally well to counteract the franc loss. So I don't have an answer, sorry. It's something that we're trying to solve ourselves.
All right, thank you so much. We do have about 3 minutes left. We actually do have a hard stop at 4:30. So effectively, this brings us to the end of our panel today. I want to thank everybody for taking part, specifically our panelists. For the entrepreneurs in the room, there's also investors on the phone call. In the chat, I have included a drive to one-pagers for these specific entrepreneurs and others who are in the process of fundraising right now. Everybody should have access to that drive if you're registered for the session. So if you just click through the chat, you will find one-pagers in every single business that is currently fundraising and is within the Nguriza project. Again, I want to thank everybody for your attention today. I know a 1.5 panel is not easy to pay attention to virtually, but thank you again. And yeah, I wish you the best the rest of your day, depending on where you are. Thank you once again, and thanks to the organizers. Thank you, Sam.